power of story transcends human experience. People have been telling stories around the fireside and to each other for as long as language existed. Joseph Campbell talks about the power of story in the hero's journey, the call to adventure, transcendence through the abyss, and then the gifts that we get to give each other once we've alchemized whatever that journey was. Warriorside to me is the ability for veterans or first responders or anybody to tell their story in a way that resonates with the people that are listening, because our stories are all the same. And back to Joseph Campbell, we can see it in art, music, movies, everything. The story of the hero leaving their home, having an experience, that experiencing changing them in some powerful way, and then bringing that experience home to share it with everybody else to help them change their lives. And not only change their lives, but realize that all our stories are the same. And I guess that's what Warriorside really is for me. It's a way to share my story, to let you know that my story is your story too. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming out. And I'd say you guys are a beautiful audience, but I can't see anybody. So this is really important to me. And whenever I talk, I kind of like to start from the end. And the end is that we're all victims or benefactors of our experiences. And we start to realize that when we start to alchemize the things that we've experienced and realize that life is happening for us and not to us. And at that point, it becomes a journey, it becomes a lesson, and it stops becoming suffering. So now I'll go back to the beginning. So I grew up in New York, my family, all New York City cops, really hard people, hard men. They're Irish, Catholic cops. They drank hard, they played hard, they were hard on each other, they were hard on themselves, they were hard on us. And I admired them. And I saw my father, my grandfather, his father, my uncles, my cousins, all New York City cops. So growing up in that sort of environment for a little boy is something. So something I remembered early on in my life was I was getting picked on. I'd get off the bus and these kids were, picking on me, and they would chase me and rip my jacket. And my father said to me, after the second jacket got ripped, he said, if you come back with another ripped jacket and don't stand up for yourself, I'm gonna fight you. And so things changed. So it happened again. Got off the bus, I ran, and then I stopped because I was afraid. I was more afraid of my father than I was afraid of those two kids. And I turned around and I fought, and I started fighting, and I never stopped. And that prepared me uniquely for the profession that I chose. The world became a battlefield for me. And everybody in it was a combatant or an ally. And it prepared me uniquely for a profession and a life of violence. And I joined the SEAL team, which was perfectly suited for that. And I don't know why I joined the SEAL team. I mean, sometimes it was suited for it in that way. But a friend of mine once shared his whispers. It was something, I didn't know any SEALs, I didn't know anything about it, and so I decided I'm going to do this thing that I don't know anything about, that nobody makes it through. The attrition rate's really high. It's 30% for the guys that even show up for training, let alone the guys that say, hey, I'm going to do this thing. It goes way up. So I joined the Navy, went to a ship, worked on there for a long time, or for a couple years, and kept volunteering for the program. And I kept getting denied. I couldn't, just because of different things in the programs, I kept getting denied. And I just wouldn't give up. Something I'd learned in that with my family was don't give up. A lot of resilience, a lot of tenacity, a lot of not listening to other people. And so I just kept going on it. And eventually I did get orders. After 3 tries, I got orders. And the last thing that my chief on that boat said to me before I went to BUD/S was, I know those guys, you're not one of them, you're not going to make it. And of course, just like historically, I didn't listen, and I went, and I went to BUD/S. When I got to BUD/S, it's an experience. There are times in our lives when things change and we're around people and things that change us forever. And when I got there, the intensity and the determination of all of the other guys that were with us, it was like, I think it was about 185 of us that started, and we graduated with 40. So that intensity is there. You're completely immersed in it. And like kind of my first real experience with that was similar to some of the other experiences I had in my life. So just like my childhood prepared me to be in this place was preparing me for something else. So when we go to Bud's on Friday or Saturday night before you class up on Monday, they have a class up party, and everybody gets rotten drunk. And the instructors get rotten drunk, and that's what you do. And I didn't know anything about being a SEAL, so our instructor, Ted Fitzhenry, was there, and I said, well, I'll talk to my proctor and I'll ask him, hey, what's being a Navy SEAL like? And so he looked at me and he said, you want to know what being a Navy SEAL's like? And I said, yeah. And he open-handed smacked me across the face. And I was like, okay, this sucks. Right? This wasn't what I expected at all, but I grew up a scrappy New York kid. And I wasn't, I didn't care who he was. Now I'm gonna fight my instructor on Friday night before I class up on Monday. Probably the stupidest thing anybody could ever do, right? But here I am. And we get to the other side of the Byrne so we can fight where nobody can see us. And there's a couple people around. And I don't know why he did this to this day, but he leaned forward and he said, you gonna hit me, Byrne? Go ahead and hit me. And he had his hands down. I was like, oh, hell yeah. So I hit him like 3 times. And we went to the ground, we're rolling around. Instructor Fitzhenry's a really strong guy, and I was about to get my ass kicked before they broke us up. And one of the other instructors came over the hill and he said, hey, does this go any further? And I was like, hey, if he's done, I'm done. And we went on about our business. I started up class. And 6 weeks later, I get to talk to Instructor Fitzhenry again. We're doing dive forward rolls in the demo pit. And the demo pit's imagine it's water, it's about 2 or 3 feet deep. Kind of shallow in other places, and it's a place where they burn explosives and smoke, and so it's full of sulfur. It smells bad, and they have us do these dive forward rolls. So you get it up in your nose, you get it in your eyes. It burns your eyes. It burns your skin. It's horrible. I don't know if I die from something. It's probably from that. But I'm doing these dive forward rolls, and I dove forward, and my arm didn't go forward with me. It stayed back, and I snapped it. It's at the elbow. It snapped forward and snapped back. And so I was sure that I broke my arm. And so I went up to the ambulance to let the instructor know, the corpsman, Ted Fitzhenry. Instructor Fitzhenry, I said, I think I broke my left arm. And he said to me, what are you, a fucking doctor? I said, no, I'm not a doctor. And he said, what do you want to do? You want to join your class? Or you want to get in the ambulance? And I was like, that sounded like quitting to me. So I was like, all right, I guess I'm joining my class. So I joined my class. I spent probably another 7 or 8 hours in training, carrying boats and paddling and doing all this sort of stuff and trying to figure out how I was going to make this arm that doesn't really move and is really swollen work. And it kind of worked out. And so in the evenings, we have what's called a hygiene inspection. And at the hygiene inspection, they do an exam, and then they figure out all the injuries that we're lying about, right? Because we don't want to get kicked out of training. So it's like, how are you doing? I'm fine. Is anything wrong with you? Absolutely not. And so I said all these things, and they looked at my arm, and they're like, what's wrong with that? And I'm like, oh, it's fine. And they're like, no, it's not fine. You're done. So the arm was broken, so apparently I am a doctor. And they rolled me back, and I started with another class, and I graduated with that class. And Bud's is it's one of those places, it's just, you're never so committed to anything in your life, but every day there. When I showed up to a SEAL team, now I'm surrounded by other guys. Now it's a SEAL team, I got a trident, I'm doing all that, and we got to learn a new craft. And so I dedicated myself to learning that craft. I got a lot of different skills and tried to be as competent as I could. So the big thing was it was before all the wars, and so we wanted to have as many skills as possible and be really good at them so that if anything happened and we went to war, you got picked. And so I spent my time just trying to be the best SEAL that I could be. 9/11 happened, and now we're going to war. So again, another one of those times. If you stay with me with this, there's periods of times that change, right? And they change everything forever. And these are those times. So I went to war. And war is an interesting thing. It's the dichotomy of the best and worst of everything. The best and worst of people, the best and worst of things you see, the camaraderie and the closeness that you have with the guys that you're going to war. There's a thing called a flow state, and when you're in a team like a SEAL team, it's almost like a hive mind. If you've ever seen a SEAL team or a platoon move, it's like they're connected in their brains the way they move, and you're connected to that movement. Everything, colors are brighter, sounds are brighter. Your reflexes are super heightened, and it's intense. It's a beautiful and horrible thing, and war is like that. It's beautiful and horrible. And I remember a firefight that I got into in Afghanistan, Zabul province. And I was fighting in an orchard and had this big, beautiful river that was going through it. And before we got in the firefight, I was like, man, I bet you could trout fish in there. I bet it'd be awesome, But we're going in there. We got in a firefight, and so here I am. I'm in this orchard, and I'm shooting outside the firefight, and people are shooting at me. And in the springtime, these orchards are covered in pink and white and purple flowers. And so as the rounds are coming in, and I'm shooting out, the blast from my rifle is making pink and white and purple flowers rain down on me. So I'm in this firefight, and I'm being showered with pink and white and purple flowers. And I was like, this isn't even real. So anyway, so I got back to work, and I was doing it. And those were powerful experiences. I think, again, there was another time we were cleared a house, and we got, there's one time you always wonder, what's going to happen if I knew I was going to die? And that happened one time in my career. And we were in a house, we cleared the house, and my EOD guy opened up what was a manhole cover. And we thought there was just a cache, just some things in there. But what it turned out is that underneath that manhole cover, there were 14 heavily armed insurgents wearing suicide vests. And I don't know if all of them were, but a couple of them were for sure. Most of them were. And so what happened was he opened it up. And what I heard, I didn't know all that. I heard a pop. So if you're a veteran, or if you ever pulled the pin on a hand grenade, when you throw it, the spoon flies and you hear a pop. And that's what I heard. I heard a pop. And that was a common thing to set up a house-borne improvised explosive. So what they would do is they would target us by setting a house up with explosives, and then we would go and open something, set that thing off, and in 3 to 5 seconds the house goes up. So that's what I thought happened. And I thought, I'm dead. And so I always wondered what was going to go through my mind, and what went through my mind was, shit. And that was it. And I didn't die right away, so I had time to get my things. And for all any team guys in the audience right now, I need you guys to sit down, be still right now, and when I say these 3 words, don't leave the building. So avalanche, 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 right? So I got that off the radio. And what that is that wherever you are, whatever you're doing, get out of the house and get to some place. That means fall back to a line where you can fight. And I made that call. That was, I ended up doing 8 of those deployments. I did 2 to Iraq and 6 to Afghanistan. And kind of after all that, I got more comfortable over there than I was home. So when I was home, I felt out of place. When I was over there, I felt calm and at peace, which is insane. And I was having a conversation with a friend, and it was, I think, my 6th combat deployment over there, my maybe 11th overall deployment, something like that. And he's talking to me, he says, what's next for you? And I said, well, I'll be back out here in a couple of months. I was like, there's another team, they don't have a guy, and I'm going to jump in, I'm going to take his spot. And he's like, dude, you don't need to be over here this much. He's like, and if you think you need to be over here this much, he's like, you're fucked up and you need to get some help. And I looked at him and I was like, you're fucked up and you need to get some help. What are you talking about? It's like, that's what we do. And so, but he was right, I was fucked up and I did need to get some help. So I went back and that's kind of the combat, right? So combat shapes you in ways that you don't expect it, in the most beautiful and the most horrible ways. But for me, that wasn't where the wheels fell off my bus, when the wheels fell off my bus was the year that I retired. And so I was looking forward to leaving the, at least leaving the teams anyway. I was still looking at doing some work in the intelligence community or something like that. But my son, Sean, was diagnosed with a brain tumor 3 months before I retired. I was at NICO. I got a phone call saying, explaining what happened. I just knew. I just like, this isn't good. And I broke down crying. So here I was at NICO, and I'm bawling on the floor in the room, like just heaving, crying, because I just knew. I was like, this is bad. And I went back, and I didn't know it, because every firefight I'd ever been in, I won. And I thought we were going to win this one too. And I didn't know it, but I was facing, the most difficult battle of my life, and the only one that I ever really wanted to win, and I was going to lose. And so for the next 2 years, I became Sean's primary advocate. And we went to doctor's appointments, and we went to therapy, anything, experimental therapy, anything that we could do. This is what we did. And a couple things happened that were pretty powerful. So one, I just dug in like I always dug in. Just grind it out, get it done, get Sean healed, get back to life, get as it is. But the thing about watching somebody that you love completely, getting bad news all the time, and just always, every time we went to the doctor, it was a recurrence. Every time we went to the doctor, the blood counts were low, and there was more chemo, and more radiation, more getting stuck, and more of all this stuff, and I only knew how to fight, and when I grew up, like I said, the world was a battlefield. Everybody in it was a combatant. I started fighting when I was really young, and I never stopped, and that's all I knew how to do. And that's all I knew how to show Sean how to do. But Sean showed me how to do something else. And Sean was the most courageous, the bravest man that I've ever seen. He faced his mortality with the poise of a seasoned veteran, right up until the end. Unbelievable. But he taught me something else. He taught me about love and compassion. He taught me about, not going so inside and into this battle that, that you lose yourself. He had a smile for every single nurse and every single doctor. At one point, he just finished a really difficult time, and he's like, Dad, I want to give other kids, gifts, just like I got. And so here we are, a year into this thing, and we start a nonprofit so Sean can buy gifts for other kids that are fighting cancer. He's fighting his own battles. And so he gave 8 gifts, and his promise to the world, he said, I'm going to do this to the end of my life, and he did. He gave 8 gifts, and he died about 8 months later. And that's what there's a point in our lives when you know that nothing can be the same. You are no longer the same human being. You can't. You are absolutely changed. And I had periods in my times where I transitioned, I evolved. But when I was holding Sean's hand in the PICU at Balboa, probably about 100 yards away from where Sean was born, he breathed his last breath on my cheek while I was holding his hand. And I didn't know how to do that. Everything in my life, nothing prepared me for that. I had no fucking idea. And but that's what it was. And I knew at that moment I could no longer be the same human being that I was. But I wasn't the human being that I was going to become. And so I did what I did. I did what I knew how to do, right? I went back to work. He died on Saturday. I went back to work on Monday. That year I set revenue records. I expanded my team by about 3 departments. I just worked myself to death. I was drinking, sleeping, and working, and that's all I had the bandwidth to do. And then something crazy happened. I had decided I had to ask for help. And it was strange because I had friends telling me I had to do this and I had to do that, and I had to go to Mexico and I had to do all these crazy things. And so I remember they said, you got to go to Mexico and you do this thing. And I was like, so a bunch of Navy SEALs got together and figured out how to get to pay people to pay for them to go to Mexico and do drugs. I was like, no, I'm not fucking doing that. And so, but I did, right? A few months later I went down and I was pretty desperate, and I went down and I did this medicine. And then the angels came out, and the angels were therapists. The angels were shaman and light workers and energy workers and all these things that I was just like these hippie people that I had no idea. And when I first met them, when I first went down there, these 2 ladies came up to me that were facilitating this journey, and they said to me, we love you so much, and we're so happy you're here. And they say all this stuff, and they walked away, and I looked at my buddy, and I was like, dude, what the fuck is wrong with them? You know? And he's like, they're happy, Jim. I was like, I don't know. I don't like it, man. I think they started early. You know? So, but it's what I needed, and it led to a spiritual curiosity, and it led to an understanding of a higher power, and that no kidding, life wasn't happening to me, life was happening for me. And I was starting to learn to be a benefactor, and of all those experiences, even the bad ones, even losing my son Sean, you know, because it woke up an empathy and a compassion in me, and I was able to connect to what he taught me when he was going through all that with that courage. And I'm going to close with a couple things. So Sean and I worked together. He wanted to be a public speaker, and he wanted to share 3 things with the world. So the first one is, you're stronger than you think you are. You know, and you have no idea how strong you really are until you have to be. Every single one of you, all of us. Everything that you've experienced in your life until that point, and to this point, you've survived. And there's no reason to stop that now. So you are as strong as you need to be. The second one was, fight for your hopes and dreams. And if you're going to fight like the third monkey on the ramp to Noah's Ark and it's starting to rain. Right? So with that, don't listen to anybody. Everybody's full of shit, right? You know, follow your dreams, right? You know, I learned that when I was young, right? Don't listen to anybody. Do what you know is right. And the last one is give back, even if it's just a smile. And Sean taught me that every single time we went to the doctor. And the very last thing I want to leave you with is a challenge. Live like you mean it. Don't let important words remain unsaid. Right? Find time, forgive, find the opportunity. You know, and the most important thing is love yourself and everybody else. Yeah. Thank you so much.